Hey everyone, this is Turd Flinging Monkey and welcome to part 5 of the Zen of ZFG. The subject of today's video is attachment, or rather, how to overcome attachment. Now, I don't usually talk about religion on this channel because most of it's bullshit. However, occasionally, just like a broken clock is right twice a day, you can find some wisdom in religion. And in this case, I'm going to turn to Buddhism. Now, I'm not a Buddhist or anything, but I'm going to read some famous quotes from Buddhism, and this is going to apply to what I'm talking about in this video. Quote, "The root of suffering is attachment." Quote, "Most of our troubles are due to our passionate desire for and attachment to things that we misapprehend as enduring entities. You only lose what you cling to," unquote. Now with those quotes out of the way, I want to talk about why in order to reach the point of not giving a shit about things, you have to not get attached to things. And this doesn't just apply to physical things like being attached to your money or your job, it especially applies to relationships. Most people understand that things like jobs and physical possessions are temporary. Cars break down. No matter how much you love that car, it's going to break down unless you put a lot of money into keeping it restored. Your job, most people change jobs every 3 to 5 years. So even if you really love your job, chances are it's not going to be there in a few years. Maybe you'll move up, maybe you'll move back, I don't know. But people change jobs all the time because companies get shut down, companies get bought out, companies outsource, things happen. No matter how much you love your job, change will happen. If you get too attached to your daily routine, you're not going to be able to embrace and anticipate change. You're going to fear it, you're going to drag your feet, and it's going to leave you behind. But going back to some of our earlier videos when we talked about defining your meaning through relationships, the reason why people often define their meaning through relationships is they get too attached to those relationships. When you're too attached to anybody, not just a single person, but any group, any organization, this applies to tribalism, nationalism, anything that you define yourself through, anything you get too attached to, you become blind. And then you care more about maintaining that relationship than doing what's in your best interest. And we'll come back to that later, but I hope you understand that in order to not give a shit about what people think, what people say, and the world around you at large, you can't get attached to relationships or things. However, that doesn't mean you can't appreciate them in the moment. Think of it like when you pick a flower. You pick a flower so you can enjoy the fragrance and the beauty of it and all that stuff. You're enjoying the flower in the moment. In a couple days, that flower is going to wilt and die. Now, some people say, well, don't pick the flower, water it, dig it out by the root and put it in a pot and bring it home. Even if you do that, the flower is still going to die. You can't stop the flower from dying. If your goal is to preserve that moment for as long as possible, you're going to be disappointed because the end will eventually come. That flower will die, that relationship will sour, change will happen. But if you're not worried about that, if you don't get too attached to that thing, that relationship, that whatever, as long as you maintain detachment from it, you can appreciate it in the moment for what it is. Yes, this flower is going to die, but I can appreciate it for now. And when it inevitably does die, I'm okay with that. I've mentally prepared myself to let go of this flower once it dies. And we have to do the same thing with pretty much everything in life if we want to maintain a good centered sense of zero fucks given. Now, I also think this is especially important to MGTOW in overcoming the so-called red pill rage. Now, in a previous video where I talked about the red pill rage, I mentioned that the reason why this happens is because men are stripped of their meaning. So many men are brought up to believe that their meaning is becoming a husband and a father and living the American dream, or whatever country you're from, the Zimbabwean dream. However, when they swallow the red pill, when they understand how gynocentric the system is, how set up against them it is, and they have to let go of those dreams, it's very traumatic because they become so attached. But if they were never attached to that prescribed meaning, if they simply lived for themselves, it wouldn't have bothered them as much. It may have still been uncomfortable. I mean, these aren't pleasant realizations, but you wouldn't have been so angry. You would have gotten through the red pill rage much quicker if you simply accepted it and you weren't attached to that definition of manhood and masculinity to begin with. And in another video called MGTOW Love Women, I talked about how if you understand something, you can appreciate and love it for what it is. And this applies to relationships even with women. So some of this advice is more for the younger guys who just value sex that much that you really can't talk them out of it. So my advice to you is to think of women like roller coasters. You get in line, you wait, you do your time, you finally get to go on the roller coaster, you enjoy it for a couple minutes, and then when the ride is over, you need to leave because there's people behind you waiting to get on the roller coaster too. When the ride is over, you don't just refuse to get out of the seat and say, no, I want to go on the roller coaster again. I want to go on the roller coaster all day, because you'll be removed. You have to accept that the ride is over and it's time to move on. But that doesn't mean that while you're riding the roller coaster, you just have all this anxiety and all this sadness and anger because you know the ride is going to end soon. Because then you rob yourself of the entire point of going on the roller coaster. The entire point is to enjoy yourself and have fun. Not to think about, oh, this roller coaster is going to be over in 2 minutes. I better get really sad and angry and refuse to get out. Just appreciate the ride while it lasts and then leave. And the difference between these two mindsets is attachment. If you're attached to whatever the roller coaster represents, a job, a relationship, a physical possession, whatever that is, you're holding on to tightly. And it's causing you anxiety, it's causing you anger, frustration, sadness. It's causing all these negative emotions because you're attached to it. Just let it go. Appreciate it for what it is while it lasts. And when it inevitably goes away, you'll be okay. You'll live, you'll survive, you'll move forward, you'll find happiness in something else. And speaking directly to the MGTOW community, I want to give some practical advice regarding women and relationships in the context of this discussion. The problem with modern society is equality. We expect women to be men's equal. We treat them like they're our partners, and they can never be our partners. They never were our partners. Stop trying to make them something they're not. Stop trying to fit that square peg into that round hole. That's the problem. But if you put that aside, women aren't useless. They have uses. You can appreciate them for what they are. This is why I liken them to children or dogs. Now, some people would take a comparison of a woman to a dog or a child as highly offensive, but I don't give a shit. My point in that comparison is this. Women and dogs are not inherently evil. They just need to be trained and controlled. When a child is just left to their own devices, and you've seen this, you probably know people who have kids who are out of control. They just throw tantrums all the time, they get everything they want. The parents have no control over them because they don't discipline them. And the kids just run buck wild. Child wasn't even the problem. The problem is that the parents didn't assert their authority. They didn't control the child. And it's the same thing with dogs. You probably know pet owners. You might be one of these pet owners who just doesn't believe in disciplining your pet. So the pet just runs around thinking they're the alpha, they're in charge, and just shits on everything, pisses on everything, chews up everything. And then you finally have to call like a dog trainer who comes to your house, or maybe take it to the dog trainer. And all the dog trainer does is assert their authority over the dog. And once the dog respects their authority, they're a completely different dog. So the problem isn't women. Women have not changed. Women are not anything different than they've always been. They've always been this way. Their female nature has not changed. What has changed is the society, the gynocentrism. We've created this society where we've let them become spoiled brats. We've let them become untamed wild dogs. And the results are entirely predictable. Just like when you see children and dogs out of control, you now see women out of control. If you're not at that point just to walk away from women entirely, at least have the common sense to remain in control. Now that's very hard, and it's getting harder in today's gynocentric society, but it is possible to maintain an adequate level of control in order to have a relationship with a woman to some degree. I am not endorsing marriage or long-term relationships. What I am endorsing is if you value sex that much that you can't just walk away, do not raw dog her, wear a condom, have a spare condom you put horseradish sauce in, put that in the trash can. If she tries to sperm jack you, she's just going to rub horseradish sauce in her vagina. Or think about getting a vasectomy. If you have to raw dog it, get a vasectomy. Never let her move in, never cohabitate. I don't care if she's getting kicked out of her house, whatever sob story she gives you to try to get you to let her to move in with you, don't do it. If you let her move in with you, you fall under all this common law marriage bullshit. Don't do it. Now, if you do all these things, now, I don't know about what laws are coming down the road. Feminists are always dreaming of new ways to fuck over guys and get guys' money flowing to them. under whatever pretense. So you have to be very, very careful. And now with regret rape and yes means yes, it's really not worth it in my opinion. But if you must go out there, if you must keep your dick moisturized, at least be smart, at least take every precaution necessary. Maintain control. If you maintain control, women are fine. And if this society is ever replaced with a patriarchal society, where men are allowed to maintain control over women, women will be fine as a group. When they're under control, they're fine. In the meantime, since we don't live in that society, you have to be extremely careful. And the last bit of practical advice I give you is in regards to when to cut things off. And this doesn't just apply to women, although it especially applies to women, but it applies to all relationships. It applies to all things, but especially relationships. So this is going to apply to your job, this is going to apply to your friends. When do you cut off the relationship? And the answer is when it no longer provides a net benefit. Now, value is subjective, so what you value at the time may change. So a relationship may not change. You may get exactly what you've always gotten out of the relationship, and you may put in exactly what you've always put into the relationship. But simply because of the subjective nature of value, you may value what you're putting in more than you're getting out. And at that point, it's no longer providing a net benefit to you. Now, when it comes to relationships with women, the man almost always is going to put in more than he gets out. She's the one in charge, especially in a gynocentric society. So the man is always going to be putting in more on an objective level than the woman. But if you really, really, really value her sex, maybe that's worth it to you. The subjective nature of value comes into play. But I suspect when you reach your 30s, when your sex drive calms down a bit, you're not going to value sex that much. You're going to objectively look at her, you're going to see how little she contributes to the relationship, and you're going to realize what a shitty deal you made. So don't sign any documents, don't get into anything you can't get out of. And when you realize that the relationship isn't providing a net benefit, it's time to go. It's time to kick her out or leave or whatever you have to do to end the relationship. Now, this doesn't just apply to women. If you have a friend that has changed or you've changed or whatever, and now he's just sapping you, he's just being a parasite to you. Maybe he borrows money from you and doesn't pay you back. Maybe he's just an annoying piece of shit. But you keep him around as a friend because maybe you've just been friends for a long time and you just don't want to embrace that change. Maybe you're simply just afraid of being lonely. Now, when a man gets older, a lot of his male friends are going to get married. They're going to ditch him for women. It's just going to happen. It's the nature of our sex drive. We value sex so much that we make really terrible decisions. But as a man, you need to just accept this. Don't hold on to your friends too tightly because they change too. They may turn on you and manipulate you just as much as a woman does. So if you have a friend that's manipulating you who isn't giving back what you're putting in, cut him loose, even though he's a guy, even though he's your friend. You have to have some kind of net benefit in whatever relationships you engage in. Now, on a professional level, you can use this mental exercise to guide whether you should quit your job or whatever. So if you go to a job and you're contributing your time and energy, and you're not getting what you feel you deserve back, it's time to dust off your resume and look for another job. If you don't qualify for the job you want, it's time to start training yourself. It's time to start taking courses or college classes in order to get that job that you want. I mean, what's stopping you? If you're MGTOW, you should have the time and the money to do this. So go make your dreams happen. Don't just stay in the job you're in because you fear change and because you're attached. Embrace the change. The only constant is change. If you don't like where you are, stop standing there and move somewhere else. And if you can't move somewhere else now, come up with a plan in order to get to the point where you can move to where you want to be. But in order to do all of that, you have to be detached. You can't be too attached to your job or your relationships, whether it's men or women. If you can do that, then you can embrace the change, you can appreciate the journey, you can live in the moment and be happy in the moment. Even though you know it won't last. That's okay, because nothing lasts. Just accept and embrace it. Appreciate things for what they are, and appreciate them in the moment. Like a flower. So that concludes part 5. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section, and I'll answer those in the follow-up video next week. This is Turd Flinging Monkey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.